Hello, my lovers of fear. Tonight's stories aren't about empty highways or forests. They're about stores, aisles, and parking lots, the places you thought were safe. Because sometimes danger isn't hiding in the shadows. Sometimes it's pushing a cart right behind you. Sometimes it's waiting by the sliding doors. But before I read them to you, tell me, where are you listening from right now? Are you sure that cart rolling behind you belongs to a stranger? Are you certain no one followed you into the store tonight? If you're not, maybe you shouldn't be. Hit the like button, subscribe, and stay close. Because the moment you stop paying attention might be the moment the next story begins. Now, let's begin. The Three Men at Target. I was 19 years old when this happened, and even now, just thinking about it makes my chest tighten. It was a Thursday night in early fall, the kind of night where the world feels unnervingly still. I had just finished a brutal shift at the diner, 9 hours of coffee refills, spilled syrup, and greasy dishes. My sneakers stuck with soda, my hair was pulled into a messy bun, and my body screamed for a shower and silence. But of course I needed things. Face wash, tampons, dry shampoo, and popcorn. Always popcorn. Target was open until 10, and when I pulled into the lot, my dashboard clock glowed 9:42. The parking lot was nearly empty. A few cars sat scattered like forgotten toys beneath buzzing lamps. One flickered badly, throwing broken flashes across cracked pavement. I parked under it. Light meant safety, I told myself. I clung to that thought. Inside, the automatic doors opened with a tired sigh. Target at night is different, quiet, almost too quiet. The smell of detergent and plastic hung heavy in the air. A lonely cart squeaked somewhere in the distance, echoing like a reminder that the place wasn't completely empty. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, humming with a low, constant drone that only made the silence sharper. I grabbed a red basket and wandered into the beauty aisle, shoulders finally starting to relax. Late-night Target always felt like a safe little bubble, a place to escape. That's when I saw them. 3 men. They didn't arrive together, but they might as well have. One in a black hoodie, another with a backwards cap, and the third with shaggy hair that shadowed his face. Their clothes looked ordinary, but their eyes sharp, lingering, too focused. At first, I told myself it was nothing. People glance. People shop. But these weren't passing glances. They locked on, following me in silence. I turned into the skincare aisle, trying to look busy. Within a minute, hoodie guy appeared at the end, his body angled just enough to make it clear he wasn't browsing. He didn't move. Didn't touch a single product. He just stood there, pretending badly. My skin prickled. I grabbed the first cleanser I saw and hurried toward the feminine hygiene aisle. Cap guy was already there. Leaning against the shelf, scrolling on his phone, but his eyes flicked up the second I entered. Not shopping. Just waiting. My pulse quickened. I turned into snacks, and shaggy hair appeared. He didn't even try to pretend. He just walked slowly past the aisle, his head angled, his gaze burning. It became a pattern. A silent, deliberate game. I sped up, zigzagging through aisles, doubling back, testing them. Once, I stopped completely, hiding between shelves stacked with laundry detergent. The air smelled like chemicals, sharp and suffocating. 10 seconds later, 2 of them drifted past the aisle's end, scanning like predators on patrol. My basket rattled against my leg as my hands shook. Don't overreact, I told myself. Don't be dramatic. But then I stopped walking. And so did they. I doubled back. And they doubled back too. That's when my instincts screamed, this isn't coincidence. This is hunting. I forced my legs to move, steady but fast, heading for the front of the store. My throat was dry, my heart hammering against my ribs. Up ahead, by customer service, stood a young employee, red shirt, khakis, name tag, Jeremy. He was stacking returns, humming quietly to himself. "Hey," I whispered at first, then louder. "I think I'm being followed." Jeremy froze. His eyes snapped to mine, searching my face. Whatever he saw there convinced him instantly. He pressed his walkie-talkie. "Code yellow," he murmured. Then, softly but firmly, "Stay right here. You're okay. You're not alone." Another employee appeared, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and the calm of someone who had seen everything. Her name tag read Carla. They flanked me, guiding me toward the exit like bodyguards. I risked one glance over my shoulder. The three men stood clustered at the far end of the store, their stares locked on me. Empty hands. No carts. No products. Just watching. Waiting. The sliding doors opened with a hiss, and the night air rushed in, cold, damp, electric. I pointed out my car. Jeremy insisted on walking me all the way. His head was on a swivel, scanning the shadows like a hawk. My keys shook in my hands. I fumbled, unlocked the door, slid inside, and locked it instantly. I started the engine, headlights flaring to life. Jeremy didn't leave until I'd pulled away. I thought I was safe. But then, headlights in my rearview mirror. A dark sedan rolled out of the lot seconds after I did. It merged behind me, close enough that its lights filled my car with a blinding glow. My chest tightened. I turned right at the intersection. The sedan turned right too. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I took another random turn. So did they. Each move I made, the car mirrored, slow and deliberate. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out the engine. Finally, I pulled into a gas station, praying for safety in numbers. The sedan slowed as it passed, crawling, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. For a breathless second, it hovered like it might turn in. Then, just as suddenly, it sped off into the night. I sat frozen in my car, gas station lights buzzing overhead, hands trembling too hard to even grip the wheel. They never touched me. They never said a word. But I'll never forget the feeling of being hunted, first by three silent shadows under fluorescent lights, and then by a car that refused to let me go. And if that story makes your skin crawl, just wait. Because the next one isn't about strangers circling you in a store. It's about working the graveyard shift, and realizing the man standing at the end of the aisle has been watching you all night. The man in the hoodie. I was 24 when this happened, working the graveyard shift at a Walmart in a small Florida town that never really slept. My hours were 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. I stocked shelves, broke down pallets, and learned the rhythm of a building that felt more alive after midnight than it ever did at noon. If you've never been in a big box store at 3 a.m., you don't know the sound of it. The air vents moan like distant surf. The cooler compressors throb behind the dairy doors. Fluorescents buzz so softly that you only hear them when your cart stops moving. Every squeak of a pallet jack echoes like a question you don't want answered. That night was slow, February, humid even in the dark. I was zoning out and cleaning supplies when I felt that small change in pressure you can't explain. The hairs on my forearms lifted. I looked up. He was standing at the far end of the aisle. Tall, slim, faded brown hoodie with the hood up, torn jeans, gray sneakers. He didn't hold a basket. Didn't pick up a product. He stood with his hands in his pockets, chin tipped slightly down so the aisle camera would catch his hood instead of his face. When he finally glanced my way, I felt the cold drop into my stomach like a stone. His eyes were wrong, too still, too empty, as if he were present without being there. "You find everything all right?" I tried, the way we're taught. He didn't answer. A tiny shake of the head, and he faced the shelves again. The second hand on my watch swept once. Twice. I pretended to study a row of disinfectant wipes and pushed my cart to the next aisle. 5 minutes later, I felt it again, watched, measured, weighed. I turned into brooms and buckets. He was at the end cap now, hands still buried in his pockets. I told myself it was nothing. People are out at night. Plenty come in to warm up, to breathe air that isn't their own, to stand still a while in a place where nobody asks questions. But he wasn't standing still. Every time I moved, he reappeared, half visible behind paper towels, then at the corner of Seasonal, then, how I noticed, I don't know, 3 aisles ahead, a shade behind a display of plastic storage bins. Never closer than 20 feet. Never farther than 30. Just inside the space where you feel safe if you pretend hard enough. Around 1:10 a.m., I cut through toys to grab a fresh box cutter from hardware. He was there first, behind the bikes, his cheek briefly reflected in a plastic Spider-Man helmet. For 3 seconds he looked directly at me, not blinking. I felt the store shrink around us until the aisle was a tunnel, and we were the only 2 people inside it. I backed out, forced my cart to roll. In the center aisle I almost ran into Maya from groceries, earbuds in, her hoodie tied around her waist. "Hey," I said too loudly. "You seen Luis?" "Our night manager." She slid out one earbud. "Break room." "Why?" "Just, can you stick to the main aisles for a bit?" Her eyes flicked past me, reading my face. She didn't ask questions. "You got it." I found Luis by the back door near receiving, sipping burnt coffee from a paper cup. "There's a guy tailing me," I said. "Brown hoodie. Won't speak. Keeps popping up." Luis didn't roll his eyes or tell me to stop being paranoid. He put his cup down and straightened. "Show me." We walked cleaning paper Seasonal in a slow, casual loop. The hoodie was gone, of course. My heartbeat felt dumb and loud. Luis clapped my shoulder. "Stay near an associate until 2. I'll keep an eye out." At 2:13 a.m., the hoodie reappeared in cereal. He stood beside a display of family-size boxes, facing sideways like he was listening to something in the next aisle. I watched from the mirrored convex dome above the corner, those little bubble mirrors that let you see who's coming. He didn't shop. He didn't leave. He just waited. I changed patterns. No more straight lines. No more predictable loops. I cut through garden, backtracked to pet, ghosted past pharmacy. I'd stop, stack 2 cases, and stand with my head tilted like I was counting inventory while my eyes tracked the edge of the mirror. The hoodie answered every move with a move of his own. 20 feet. 30 feet. Then 20 again. At 3:37 a.m., I took my break. The back room felt like a submarine, no windows, humming vending machine, bulletin board littered with half-torn notices. My hands were steady on the outside, but my chest was tight as a fist. I ate 2 bites of a granola bar and tossed the rest. When I pushed back through the employees-only door, he was at the far end of the corridor, outside of where customers are supposed to be. He shouldn't have been there. For one suspended breath, we both stilled. Then he stepped away like he'd never been in the wrong place, and I was alone with the throb of the soda machine. I found Mike in paper goods and told him not to work alone. We kept the radios live. Luis did a slow roll of the main aisles. Nothing, 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 and then suddenly the hoodie again, half hidden behind a tower of bottled water. He was good at not being seen. Good at finding blind spots. He made himself the gap between 2 cameras. The person who wasn't there if you only glanced. Around 6:05 a.m., the front doors are unlocked for the early trickle. A couple of retirees with exact lists, someone grabbing milk for a toddler who had run out, a man in work boots buying thermoses. The ordinary world filtered back in. The hoodie disappeared the way fog disappears, without motion, without sound, just gone when you finally look up. I clocked out at 7:03 a.m. The sky bruised pink over the lot. The air smelled like wet asphalt. My car sat where I'd left it, dew beating the windshield. I pretended not to scan the shadows. Keys between fingers, just in case, stupid, but I did it anyway. I slid behind the wheel, locked the doors, started the engine. The radio came alive in a burst of static. No one moved. No one knocked on the glass. No one leaned up from the back seat. I drove home like a person learning the shape of their own fear, checking the mirror every block. No car followed. No engine crept up behind mine. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my body felt hollow, the adrenaline gone like tide water draining. The next day, around noon, I microwaved last night's leftovers and turned on the local news. The headline made my fork stop midair. County Walmarts issue trespass order for overnight stalker. The footage was grainy, still pulled from a ceiling camera. But it was him. Same faded hoodie. Same posture, hands in pockets, head canted down, face turned just enough to blur. The segment said he'd appeared at multiple stores after midnight, never buying anything, always watching employees. He'd waited in a lot once, idling in a car with its lights off until an associate walked to theirs. No crime committed. No words spoken. Just a pattern so precise that corporate told every location to ban him on site. We never saw him again. But here's what I learned about fear: it doesn't need a voice. It can stand at the end of an aisle and drain the color out of everything you thought was normal. It can lean into blind spots until you forget how to breathe. And if you think the worst thing that can happen in a store is a silent watcher at 3 a.m., listen closely to the next story. Because not every danger wears a hoodie in the night. Some of them smile in daylight, ask for you by name, and keep coming back, again and again. Man who wouldn't leave. My name is Jessica, and I was 23 when this happened. At the time, I worked behind the jewelry counter at a large department store. I'd been there long enough to know the rhythms: slow afternoons with barely a customer, frantic weekends filled with people pawing at display cases, and the occasional man sweating bullets as he tried to pick the perfect engagement ring. I thought I'd seen it all. But then he walked in. It was a Wednesday, just past 4 p.m., the store quieter than usual. He looked ordinary, short, stocky, maybe mid-30s, a worn baseball cap shadowing his face. My coworker was closest to him, ready to help. But he pointed directly at me. "She always helps me," he said firmly. The words made me falter. I had never seen him before. Not once. Still, I smiled politely and approached. "What can I help you with today?" He said he was looking for an engagement ring. My guard lowered for just a moment. Plenty of men walked in unsure, overwhelmed, just hoping we could guide them. I pulled out a tray of solitaires and asked simple questions: her style, her size, her favorite metal. But he didn't answer. Not really. And when I looked up, I realized his eyes weren't on the rings. They were on me. I nudged the tray closer. "Notice the cut here?" I said, tapping the diamond. He glanced down for barely a second before locking eyes with me again. A faint smile crept across his face, too faint, too steady, like he was enjoying a private joke I wasn't part of. That shopping trip dragged on for nearly an hour. He claimed he didn't know her size, didn't know her style, didn't even know if she liked yellow gold or white. Instead, he rambled about random things: some band he wanted to book, a party he was planning. At one point, he sighed and said money was tight, that he wasn't sure if he could afford a ring yet. But then, as if to prove a point, he pulled a thick wad of cash from his wallet, fanned it deliberately in front of me, and slid it back in with a grin. The whole time, his eyes never left my face. Finally, I suggested he come back with his girlfriend so she could pick something herself. He nodded slowly, too slowly, and left. I exhaled. My coworkers agreed his behavior was strange, but I convinced myself I'd never see him again. I was wrong. The next week he returned. Same words. "I want her to help me." He ignored my coworker completely. Again, he stared more than he shopped. But this time, the questions grew personal. Was I Hispanic? Where was I from? How old was I? Did I like working here? I gave vague, one-word answers, forcing the conversation back to jewelry. My stomach tightened with every minute. His smile stayed fixed, but his eyes scanned me like he was memorizing details. By his third visit, it was obvious. There was no girlfriend. There was no ring. He was coming back for me. One evening, he asked to see a gold chain. I handed it over, hoping it would speed things up. Instead, he leaned across the counter, lowered his head, and asked me to put it on him. My hands shook as I clasped it around his neck. He looked at himself in the mirror, then turned to me. "Do you like it?" he asked softly. I forced a polite, "Sure." "Take it off," he said, bowing his head toward me. He made me do this with 4 more chains. Each time, he leaned closer. Each time, his body brushed the glass, forcing me into his space. And each time, his eyes stayed locked on mine, watching, unblinking. When I reminded him there were no sales running that week, hoping he'd leave, he just smiled wider. "That's okay," he said. "I'll come back when there is." And he did. Again. And again. Soon, he wasn't just showing up, he was calling. Repeatedly. Asking for me by name. Asking for my schedule. My coworkers refused to give details, but he'd hang up and call back minutes later, his voice steady, insistent, always wanting me. One night he phoned twice in an hour, demanding to know when I worked. My manager finally answered and told him flatly, "Sir, you are not welcome here anymore." The man only chuckled before hanging up. That night, as I walked to my car, every shadow looked like him. Every sound in the parking lot made me jump. I locked my doors before even putting the key in the ignition. My heart hammered as I drove home, headlights of random cars making me flinch. The next day, my manager told me something that made my blood run cold. 3 months earlier, before I even realized this man existed, he had already called the store twice, asking for me by description. The tall girl at the jewelry counter, the pretty one. He wanted my schedule. He wanted my phone number. So he had been watching me even before that first day. Planning. Waiting. HR opened a case, told me to avoid him if he returned. Security promised to escort me if needed. The police said his behavior was very concerning, but until he broke the law, there was little they could do. But here's the truth. I didn't need a crime to know I was in danger. I felt it in every stare he pinned on me, every phone call asking for me, every step he took closer when I tried to step away. And that's what still haunts me. He wasn't a stranger in the shadows. He was someone who walked through the doors of my workplace, smiled politely, and made it his hunting ground. And if that story makes you shiver, wait until you hear the next one. Because not every stalker smiles across a jewelry counter. Some of them block your path, corner you in an empty aisle, and follow you all the way to the exit. The black SUV. My name is Laura, and I was 41 when this happened. I wasn't a kid anymore, not naive, not someone easily spooked. I had lived in cities, traveled alone, learned to trust my instincts. But that night at Macy's taught me something terrifying. No matter your age, no matter how careful you think you are, you can still be hunted. It was late September, 2019. I had gone to lunch earlier that day with friends, and one of them brought along a guy named Chris. He was younger than me, friendly, a little goofy. We didn't know each other well, but he was harmless. Afterward, I went home, changed clothes, and decided to run a quick errand before bed. Macy's was closing soon, and I had a coupon expiring that night. I figured I'd slip in, grab skincare and tights, and leave in 10 minutes. When I pulled into the lot, it was nearly empty. The store loomed too brightly against the night sky, its glass doors glowing in an otherwise dark plaza. Inside, the music was turned down low, and most of the staff were clearly ready to leave. The place felt hollow, bright lights above, but shadows stretching too far between the racks. I wandered through cosmetics, then accessories. My basket stayed light, and my guard stayed down. Until I turned into one of the smaller aisles. He was there. Tall. over 6 feet. Dark, messy hair, patchy stubble, clothes that looked like he'd worn them for days. He startled me at first, just appeared, like he'd been waiting behind a shelf. His eyes were wide and unblinking, jittery, as if too much caffeine or something stronger burned in his veins. "Hi," he said quickly, too quickly, like he'd been rehearsing it. Hi," I answered. "You shopping late too?" His voice was casual, but there was something off, like his words were normal, but the way he said them wasn't. I laughed awkwardly, tried to keep it short. "Just grabbing a few things." He stepped closer, too close, blocking part of the narrow aisle. "You're really pretty. We should get a drink tonight." The air left my lungs. That wasn't a casual compliment. It was pressure, cloaked in fake charm. I forced a smile. "I have a boyfriend." He tilted his head, grinned. "So? What's wrong with having two?" My throat went dry. I mumbled something, tried to step around him. That's when he nudged his cart forward just slightly, enough to block my path. He was testing how much space I'd let him take. Before I could say anything, I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, fancy seeing you here." It was Chris, the same friend from lunch. Relief surged through me like oxygen. I turned, smiled, forced it. "Yeah, what are the odds?" The man's posture changed instantly. His grin vanished, his shoulders stiffened. He backed up a step, pretending to study scarves on a nearby rack. Chris lowered his voice. "You okay?" I whispered. "No." He cornered me. "He's been following me." We walked together, side by side, trying to look casual. But the man didn't leave. Near the coats, he appeared again, half hiding behind a mannequin. In HomeGoods, he stood by the luggage, pretending to inspect tags but watching us in the reflection of a mirror. No matter where we went, he was there, always close enough to see, never close enough to grab. By the registers, I hoped it was over. Chris and I checked out at self-service, scanning items as if this were just any other night. But when we looked toward the sliding exit doors, there he was. Not browsing. Not waiting in line. Just standing by the glass, pacing slowly, eyes locked on us. He didn't even have a single item in his cart. We killed time near the perfume counters. 10 minutes. 20. 30. He didn't leave. He lingered, as if determined to outlast us. Every time I glanced up, he was still there, shifting his weight, watching. Finally, after nearly 40 minutes, he walked out. I breathed relief too soon. When Chris and I made our way outside, the parking lot was nearly deserted. My car sat under a lonely light pole. And parked directly next to it, a black SUV. Engine off. Windows tinted. No driver visible. I froze. My body wouldn't move. "I think that's his car," I whispered. Chris's jaw tightened. We stood, not approaching, not daring to move. And then, the headlights clicked on. The engine rumbled to life. The SUV pulled out slowly, crawling past us before turning toward the lot's exit. The driver never looked our way. The windows stayed black, like empty eyes. I didn't breathe until it was gone. Chris walked me to my car, waited until I locked the doors, headlights washing over his face as I pulled away. I drove home trembling, checking every mirror, every turn, convinced the SUV would reappear. Nothing happened. But that was almost worse. Because I will never know what he intended. Why he waited. Why he blocked my path. Why he lingered by the exit like a spider near its web. And here's the part that keeps me awake at night. If Chris hadn't shown up when he did, I would have walked to my car alone. Straight toward that black SUV. Straight into the dark. This was the final story. But if you stayed with me through all 4, you already understand, these aren't just stories. They're warnings. Because the truth is, the next stranger who asks for your number, the next pair of eyes watching you from across the aisle, the next car idling beside yours in the dark, might not be a coincidence at all. It might be waiting for you. Tell me what you think in the comments. This was Tell Me What Happened. and I'll see you in the next story.